welcome to the AI FISEC Today podcast. This is where we're embarking on a thrilling journey into the intersection of artificial intelligence and physical security. Super excited about our guest, Jon Harris. He is the leader over the ecosystem of partnerships and strategy team over at Hivewatch. And he's going to talk to us today a little bit about empowering the security operator with the use of ML AI. Jon, how are you? Welcome to the podcast.
Thanks for having me on. I'm excited to be here. Fantastic. I guess one, I want to recognize you and acknowledge you for stepping out of the comfort zone of the industry and finding a passionate topic and putting content out there. So, congrats. Taking the first step of even having a podcast is huge, and then continuing to have people on it. So appreciate what you're doing.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, when we have smart people in the industry, we need to create a platform for them to talk, right? So that's why you're here. Keep all the smarts with you. So tell us, Jon, more about your role over at Hivewatch. Like, what Hivewatch, what you're doing there. Just give us a brief background on your history in the business for the audience.
Yeah, so in my current role of head of ecosystem partnerships and strategy, focusing on building out our partnership ecosystem, people that we integrate with and either take inputs from or potentially put outputs to. So those who don't know what Hivewatch does, we're a security operations platform, software platform that aggregates different data from different stuff, puts it in front of a security operator and operator team. I won't do a demo or bore you to death with more details around that. That's what this is about. But we do leverage machine learning, AI, and algorithms as part of our product, so it's relevant to this topic. And so that's what we do and what I do there. Personally, I've been in the industry for over 20 years. My first job was a security officer. And I worked my way up on the end user side for about 10 years before being the head of security and compliance at a large Fortune 50 aerospace defense company. I then went and worked for access control manufacturer, went into consulting, did consulting in a couple different facets for a number of years, worked for a different access control and SaaS company, and then joined Hivewatch over about a year and a half ago.
What a leap from a security officer to where you are now. Right?
Yeah.
I started in sales and I ended in sales, so you definitely have moved in progressive direction. Yeah,
I was once told by the president of the business unit that I worked for when I was a security director. I was moving into a business development role and going back to school to get my MBA, and I'm like, man, like sales is going to be hard. And he looked me dead in the eyes and says, "You've been selling me security for the last 5 years. You can go sell it to other people." And I'm like, you know what? He's right. So we're all in the business of sales, whether we know it or not. Some are just better at it.
if you've got a problem to solve, you always got a job, something to sell.
Exactly.
That's awesome. Thank you. So tell us, as we usually do on the podcast, just a one fun thing that you'd like the audience to know about you.
I have been coaching youth, high school, and college lacrosse for the last 20-ish years. So I'm originally from Maryland, grew up a lacrosse guy, moved to Minnesota, and have been coaching it ever since I moved out here in the early 2000s, and at all various levels, boys and girls. And I still coach to this day. And out of my 4 kids, so another fun fact, I have 4 kids and only one of them is playing, but I don't force it on them. They make it of their own choice. So that's my fun fact of Jon for the day.
So when you're not leading security teams, you're leading lacrosse champions.
Exactly.
Awesome. So now that leads us to the segment. So the title is Empowering the Security Operator with the Use of Machine Learning, or ML, in AI, or artificial intelligence. So start us off. Tell us what you think about it, and we'll go from there.
I think we often look at, and especially in the security industry, there's a lot of conversation around return on investment and reducing costs, and kind of this net negative impact or reduction impact of new technology. And that's the easy, I think, lazy way to start proposing machine learning or AI into the industry. So you talk to most security directors, and their largest cost center will be their people. And so, what do we easily say? Hey, you use my widget or my thing that has ML on it, and I can reduce your headcount by X or take down your officer cost by Y. And I look at that and just see it as the wrong approach, because as soon as you come in and start delivering a solution that's going to impact people negatively, that are going to be the same people who are going to be using it, I'm going to be reluctant to adopt a technology that is built to replace me. And I've seen it, all in different industries. When I was in the aerospace industry, and we look at like manufacturing automation, or different types of approach that sound really great in the executive office, but in the front lines don't pay off. Then there's tension there, and there's unnecessary creation of instability within your workforce. So what I like to promote is that we are uplifting the security operator or the security officer, and making that job more of a higher level occupation versus replacing it. Now, over time, you may be able to do that job with less human capital. That shouldn't be your focus. That's maybe a beneficial outcome of looking at automating and streamlining repetitive low value tasks, which is the core functionality of machine learning and automation and AI, is take the stuff that's really easy to do and do it for you, and reduce that so that those higher level functions for security operators. When I say security operator, I'm thinking about the person who's sitting in front of the workstation, the cameras, who's working in a GSOC or some sort of operating center, who's got all this data coming in. And how do we make it easier for them to do more higher level thinking jobs like analytics, and meaning like I'm taking this information and I'm analyzing it and saying, is this an actual threat? And focusing on the things that, at least currently, only humans can do, or only humans can do with high confidence and repeatability. And look at the other things like tailgate detection, and faulty cameras being offline, and my NVR is no longer recording, and just take care of those through repeatable automated processes, and then feed them into the learning engine using applications that can leverage things like machine learning.
Yeah, it's term of augmentation, right? So like augmenting humans as opposed to replacement.
100%.
And using that modernization or digital transformation, if you will, within orgs to reinvent maybe like what a security operator stands for. And so I'm curious, in that reinvention, like where do you think that's going for
Well,
those people?
if you look back at like the security industry over the last 100 years, there was a time where the only way that we could address issues was put a body there. And then eventually we said, we can lock the door to keep people out. We don't need somebody standing there monitoring it and saying you can come in, you can't. So now we have locks and keys. Then we say we have a camera we can put there, and we can monitor the area, and we can monitor, instead of putting 10 people out there, we can monitor 10 places through one place. Right. So you have this like continuous development of like how we can aggregate tasks together and solve them with doing more with less. So I see that evolution, and maybe in the last 10 years we've been, as an industry, focusing more on like point solutions, right? So that's what we were used to before. Like, create a camera, point it at this area so now we can see it. That place needs to be secure, put a lock on it. And then we reinvent the lock in kind of just different flavors with, badge access and electronic access control, et cetera, et cetera. Well, now we have this aggregation of different technologies and these things that have been created outside of our industry. Like, if you look at what cloud computing has done for video, it completely sideswiped it. But the industry being a low adoption, slow adoption industry, it took a long time for us to trust cloud, even though it was just the same DVR in someone else's room. And we're used to having it under our desk, and now it's in their closet, right? So conceptually, what we don't understand, we don't trust. And so that's where I think this next evolution, when you look at how the operator gets to upskill themselves, you can find a world where, one security operator is doing business intelligence and threat assessment and these other more like intellectually challenging activities where you can make it into um, a more desirable position. So you look at, your typical $12 an hour security officer job sitting in there where you're overworked, you're overstimulated, and you can go make more working at a checkout line at Costco than you can in that role. Aggregate these tools that automate and streamline the low value tasks and allow this person to now become an analyst and a professional, and you take it and move it from a side gig to a profession, and now you can still do more with less. You have that, maybe four jobs now combined into a single role because you've put um these tools under them for them to manage and assist them. And then now you can pay more for that role because you've combined these roles together. These people have now a career path and development. They want to stay there. They want to be there. They want to be a part of it. They want to learn. And now you're creating, future valuable assets within your organization versus potentially this, revolving door that you have to fill these positions. And you add that with the fact that, like, if you're using access control A with video system B with alarm monitoring D, and you're also got a key management system, and you also have this other stuff, and you're also looking at, the fire system. How long does it take you to train that person? Your turnover is 75%. It takes you 6 months to get them trained. And if you're turning over, 50% of your people every 3 months, you're in a perpetual loop of retraining and recreating versus just upskilling and maintaining and kind of looking at it the way that professionals look at, like, engineering or these other like intellectual positions and roles and tasks, and approaching it that way versus approaching it as like, a line worker in a manufacturing plant.
Yeah, it's the evolution of the security operator, while has always changed, like most jobs. It seems like the proliferation of AI within the tech that we live in or our space that is slow to adopt, as you mentioned, but still they're adopting it. Um, it'll be super interesting to see at the end what that new role is going to look like. And as someone that sells to end users, like, one of the things that I always found really interesting on a similar topic was them selling risk in an organization. Because from my personal experience, and even sometimes even preparing them with content to go internally to sell it, for the business to care to put money behind mitigating that risk usually has to be in high probability and high in impact. So the upper right hand quadrant for the business to say, okay, let's start paying attention. And so, but to sell that was difficult. And so you effectively hear a lot of security professionals say, well, we can't get the money for this, we can't get the money for that. And I'm like thinking, well, you're probably positioning it wrong. And
Right.
so one of the things that over the years I've looked at is, how to use security tech to drive speed, productivity, performance, agility, corporate application connectivity, right? Maybe, and basically how to look at it from a way where they can start to dip into the pockets around the departments that actually have money, like IT and facilities. And so, and so this topic is super interesting because now, to the points that you're talking about, it's like the consideration for what this new operator role could look like you call it an analyst, or they're looking at different things besides low level tasks that ML could replace, is now could potentially be a multifaceted security role, maybe a
Mhm.
security business role, analyst. It just seems like some might find that there's some limitations or restrictions on their future with AI, but I'm very optimistic about it. I find that actually, if anything, it levels people up. Um, so I'm not
Yeah, I
sure
mean,
if that what your
I
thoughts are
think
about that.
so. Let me gonna tell a story quick to kind of hammer home what you just said. Um, when when I had this aha moment, I was at GSX the last time it was in Dallas, and I was still an end user at the time, and I sat through a like half day workshop that I thought was on business continuity and emergency response. It was the first time the concept of ESRM or enterprise security risk management was articulated in a way that landed with me and that I understood. And it was an aha moment for me where I was there with, you know, I was a security director at the time. I had my security manager with me. We ate dinner that night and I'm scribbling on a napkin, like, this is what we're going to go back and do. And so we went back and kind of, we created an internal marketing campaign. I actually went to marketing and said, "Hey, I need your help. I need to do an internal marketing campaign to rebrand the security department." And 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 we had a working session and came up with a mission and kind of a value proposition that says, you know, in, instead of being an enforcement agency or risk management, our number one objective is to keep the business operational. When I went to the CEO and I went to the business unit president, I went to everybody and I said, "Hey, so security's job is to keep the business operational." And there wasn't a shrug. There wasn't like, "I don't understand." There was a, "You're right." Right. So, and I said, "And how do we do that? We keep it safe. We keep the doors open. We generate value through the uneventful day. And when bad things happen, because they will happen, we're prepared to address them and resolve them as quickly as possible. But our number one objective, we made airplane parts and airplane components, was to make sure every shipment that was supposed to be out that day got out, and every employee that was supposed to be in got in." And that's a difference of keeping, like, making sure bad stuff doesn't happen versus enabling all the good stuff to happen. So that completely reframed the way I approach security and the way I approach my career thereafter. And so then that was the start of my journey of understanding the business of security and speaking to the executives in their own language, talking about, you know, the impact on financial metrics and understanding what worked for them. What does supply chain care about? What does HR care about? What does finance care about? And having a variation of my story to tell each stakeholder for what mattered to them and what mattered to their organization, and then rolling it up under. Because if I tell anybody, like, I'm going to buy this tool, it's going to cost X, and it's going to assist in the operation of the business to make sure that we get what we want, which is a safe environment that everybody can get in and all the product gets out. I'm going to have a hard time with anybody saying, "No, don't do that." Right? When I start trying to come up with conflated ROI metrics around, like, I can do this and that and, you know, this lever and that lever, like, I need to have that too, because
Mhm.
every capital uh, project that I would present had to have, like, this is going to cost X. You know, you know, it depreciates over Y. Right? You have to have that and understand what that means, but also you had to be able to show, how can I create other value in other places of the business and enable places in other pockets, right? And that's why I think getting to, you know, thinking that way, and as you're working with end users to say, like, this is really what we have to talk about, not like, "Hey, workplace violence, bad, bad, bad." Like, it is. I had an active shooter incident at my facility 3 months into my first security manager job. So, like, I understand it. I was living it, and it cost million-ish dollars in after action investment to get that situation, you know, resolved in both PR and cost of mental health professionals, and then the security infrastructure that I put in. But I didn't put in metal detectors. I didn't put guards with guns. I didn't do all that stuff. You know, we took a really thoughtful approach with how we're going to address it and looked at keeping that North Star of, how do we keep the operation going? How do we make sure that we're enabling the employees to do their best? So I don't subscribe to leading with, "This risk is really bad," or leading with fear. You know, it's finding that other piece. And I think in the context of leveraging machine learning and AI, it's not like, "Hey, we have gun detection, so if that bad guy walks in with an M16, we'll be able to see it." Like, that's bull. I don't know if you're allowed to cuss on your podcast, so I'm not going to cuss. I cuss on mine, but so I'll
Whatever you
keep it
want,
clean.
man.
Um,
Yeah.
that stuff is just like, you're just selling fear
Mhm.
versus selling value and actual real value. And I think like that's where my head goes with how do we articulate the true value. And again, to your point, it's a force multiplier for our operations, for our customers, and the individuals and the operators. And if you approach it that way, they're going to embrace it, they're going to use it, they're going to buy in, and the better they use it, the better it's going to perform and the better you're going to look. So if you're a security leader who's assessing tools that have AI, ML, or other emerging technology in them, you better make sure your security operators are on board, because if they don't buy in and don't use it and don't optimize it, then it's not going to take and it's not going to work. And that's where we have a lot to learn from like traditional SaaS
Mhm.
platforms. Look at the metrics that SaaS platforms measure. It's the customer acquisition cost, the lifetime value of a customer, and customer usage and retention. So how many people are using it day over day, not just in the beginning, right? That's one of the, like, there's some case studies now about threads from Instagram, and it was like the most downloaded app within like 7 days, but everyone stopped using it after like 2 weeks, right? So so the metric looked good right away. Hey, look at all these new sales per se, but then active users all the way down. And maybe people probably open it like once or twice. Like people don't even list it on their thing of like you can find me here anymore, because it was a bust basically. Um, so that's another thing that I articulate, is that we should look to our left and to our right, to our adjacent marketplaces where software is being sold, or products are being sold that have AI, ML, or emerging technologies, and say, how are they doing it? What are they using? What do they care about? And how can we use this to help not only adoption in our industry, but creating and articulating the value to the people who are going to be using it.
Yeah, because it's such a. I think what I'm hearing too is that like some of the best ways to hedge against um, losses or risk is going on the offensive, and it's so much more fun and enduring to do that. To say, okay, could we save 5 to 10% in risk mitigation, or we could just find a way to increase productivity by 20%. That's our hedge against that, and maybe we'll do some risk mitigation, but you know that I just feel like the balance of that, there's so much more attraction than just uh, on the offensive. Because the other piece is, I would say, equally in some regards hard to measure,
Mhm.
just harder to get the business around. Because risk mitigation might only include few departments, where increasing productivity could include many, or maybe just it's more of a clear measure. I don't know, but I'm curious to see how what ML and AI will do from the security operator level in order to give them tools to help them hedge against um, any losses or mitigation that otherwise they're having a difficult time trying to push within the organization. What's your maybe come from Hivewatch, or what's been your recent experience around that about those sorts of tools that are available to them today or
Yeah,
or
I
or
think
tomorrow?
yeah, risk is such a subjective in our industry, right? Or even in like insurance, for example. Like I've never, knock on wood, gotten into a car accident, but I've religiously paid my insurance every single month just in case, right? So that's more tangible because it's more personal and it's more likely to happen. Um, Going back to the topic of the active shooter, high impact, extremely high impact, super unlikely, even though I've had personal experience with it. One of the first things I'd said and articulated to the leadership staff when it happened was, how long has this company been around? 100 something years. How many times has this happened? First time. Let's not let recency bias impact our risk management assessment of this. Let's look across the whole profile and understand where it actually sits. So, and then because we in the security industry don't really have like a common set of like risk definitions, it usually, like when I was a consultant, I'd go in, I'd do a risk assessment, I'd say, based on X, I think the risk of Y is Z, and they'd either agree with me or not, right? And so I'd be like, this is my reason why, and here's how I can articulate that to you. And that still hasn't been the whole risk management, risk assessment, risk profile isn't something that's really been codified or systematized. It's very much subjective. But when you take tools and you can at least start inputting that data and putting information around it and if you build a profile, so if John Corp decides that we have these 10 buildings and these 10 cities, and we're going to build our own framework around what we think risk looks like for us. We're going to hire somebody to come in and do it. And then boom, we have it in a tool. Now I can start measuring incidents and inputs and activities around that risk framework, and ML and AI can start taking that information and doing things with it. So our headquarters is in El Segundo, LA County. So we earthquakes, right? So we have it here. We have crime. We have other things. So those are the risk profiles that aren't subjective. Those we know, and we have people there on certain days or not, or other things happen that may raise or lower the risk profile of that facility, and the system can decide to either notify me of those things if it's exceeded a threshold, notify the operator, push out certain communications, all that kind of stuff. That, like, back when I was a security director, I had all these tools, and I'm sitting there having to like do those calculations in my head. And to get it all even in one place was hard. And now you can start layering over it. It reminds me of like when I open up a weather app, my phone, and I can see, all right, is it just raining or is it going to be a thunderstorm? How long is this going to last? What's the impact going to be? It tells me 70%. So there's a ratio of confidence on how bad it's going to be or not. Is it going to snow? Is it going to rain? Is it just here? If I drive 2 miles to the south, am I out of danger? Right. So looking at, again, other applications and other types of technology and in adjacent marketplaces, and saying, how do we apply these same kind of concepts, automate it, and then continue to iterate and evolve. Because the great thing about machine learning and AI is the more data in, the more it learns, the more it creates, the more it understands, the more value it's going to give back to you. So it's one of those things where early adoption pays off, while it's though I'll say the signals I'm seeing in the marketplace based on my experience at Hivewatch is that companies are ready to adopt this technology. Big companies, influential companies, and it's going to be, I think, just like cloud computing, just like edge analytics on cameras, just like because their IT departments in these companies are already using this stuff for their other applications. And now that they're more at the table and decision makers for our products and services as well, they don't have that same scary they're the gatekeepers, and they're opening the doors right up and saying, bring these things in, we want them, we want to use less server space, we want to use less compute, and these tools help them do that.
That's all well said. I'm curious because we've got a few minutes left, but I want to get one question in and then get into a few last points about you, some things you're working on, where to find you. But the question I have is, where do you think generative AI fits within this? Like, what's the next phase for that? I know you did a presentation at GSX to talk about that, the metaverse, and a few other things, but maybe quickly, 60-second highlight, like, or 120-second highlight on what you think. Where do you think this is going to have a place with regards to empowering security operators in this next wave?
I think that it's the wild, wild west there. So there's a lot of assumptions that can be made. I think when the systems can start, not just like automating, but making those second, third, fourth level decision making, where based on previous inputs, or because right now, it's just like, this is red because you told me it's red. So when I see it, I know it's red. Versus this is red, and when I see red, I do this, and then when I do that, I do this, and then decision making, or even there's a world where the code that's used for our platforms is being written by the AI. So it's saying, we need a connector for this video system and this access control system, I'm going to create it and give it to you. And now it's there. So instead of months and months of, and I know this, too well because of my role and working on, partner integrations and development, how long and time consuming that could take when there's a world where maybe generative AI just does that. And we're already seeing code, JSON and Python code being written by, chat GPT. Um, and we had part of that conversation at GSX around the ins and outs and pros and cons about that. But that then even unleashes your design engineers to focus on other stuff, which then brings them up to a next level, and the downstream effects of that potentially I think are really exciting. So I see it on both sides, like the product development and technology development side, and then the operator side in kind of the similar same way.
Well, once you feel like we're getting closer to that, let's make another podcast on that topic. So tell us, John, what is something you're working on now that you'd like the audience to know, and where can they find you?
So I'll start with what I'm doing at Hivewatch. And so the exciting thing about us kind of being a early stage startup, and getting to do some really exciting things in the industry is we're now in the stage where people want to work with us, they want to integrate with us. Big customers are coming to us and saying, we have this thing, we want to do it with you. So I'd encourage folks to check us out, especially for me selfishly, technology partners in the industry, access control, video, risk analytics, mass communications, all that stuff. We have no interest in building those things. That's not what we do. We want to partner with them and enable customers to utilize our security operation operating system, enabled by all the tools they already own. So if you fit in that boat and you're interested in working with us, reach out to me. And where can you find me? Easiest place is probably on LinkedIn. I'm pretty active there. So you can throw a link in the show notes and they can find me there, or look up Jonathan Harris, Jonathan with a O-N at the end, and Hivewatch, and I'm sure you'll be able to find me there.